Welcome back to Flashpoint. This week, Charlotte City leaders heading back to the drawing board on how to fund their multi-billion-dollar transportation plan. The city manager suggesting front-loading funding for roads, things like that, over things like new train lines, all to get support from the Republican-led General Assembly. Joining us now, Republican on City Council, Tark Bakari. Tark, thanks for coming back to Flashpoint. Been a while.
It has. I'm glad you've made it through all the important folks now and are ready to circle back to me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. All right. In your view, you are sort of in a unique position here. You're a Republican in Charlotte, and City Council has to win over Republicans in Raleigh at the General Assembly when it comes to this transit plan. Where do you see your role in making this a reality? Because I know you've said to me that you are supportive of a big, massive, transformational transit program here in Charlotte. It's just a matter of how we get there.
Yeah, and I think that the key word, the only thing I'd correct in what you just said is transit versus transportation, which includes transit as a portion of it, but much, much more than just light rail. So, you know, for a long time, for years, even before the last 5+ years that I've been on council, but just active in the community, I've known we've needed a transformational investment. And I know that's so important to Charlotte's future, but I have found myself as the kind of opposition force locally of it just being all light rail. And, you know, critics will say, it's more than that, Tark. Look at the plan, read it. Well, the plan says a whole bunch of beautiful things about roads and networks and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the funding. The funding is 90% or 80% for light rail, Silver Line, stuff like that. And then all the roads and everything else is an afterthought. It doesn't matter what the plan says. So, but my view of my role right now is I've evolved to a point where I don't have to just be the opposition of what it was, because people are starting to realize the old plan is dead. And now I'm working locally behind the scenes with staff, with experts, but then in Raleigh particularly, as well as with the mayor and the city manager, as they're having conversations in DC to say, okay, what would a new roads first plan that maybe has some components of rail in it to compromise look like? And could we get a 6, 8, 10, $12 billion transformational investment so that we're actually preparing for the future of how people move in the city?
The idea of that roads first sort of plan has come up recently. Do you think that will be enough to satisfy the Tim Moores of the General Assembly?
Well, Speaker Moore, I speak with him regularly. He is an incredibly smart leader in our state, and he understands. He doesn't hate light rail. I think what he is saying to everyone around here is, we're on to the light rail first plan. Like, don't come to us for a referendum, let alone funding, if it's the same old plan that you've just renamed another time. So in my conversations with him, he also agrees and believes that Charlotte needs a transformational investment in transportation. He wants to make that happen, but he needs to be able to see that the way a vast majority of people move today and the congestion they feel is addressed, while we're also marching towards the future of how people are going to move and how transportation is going to occur.
Speaker Moore will be the first to remind you that he basically lives in a suburb west of Charlotte and is used to Charlotte traffic. It is not some far off land for him. You also are focused on what can be done to include technology, which is sort of your wheelhouse anyway, and how that can be incorporated in the plan.
Yeah, the key is this, and again, I'll start with what my critics might say. Tark, it says that in the plan. It is talked about that. You're not the first to invent this. That is true statement. But the problem is the plan, a lot of parts of it are the marketing rebrandings that have occurred to try to get other people on board. If it doesn't make its way into a tactical plan for execution, and more importantly, a funding plan, it isn't real. It doesn't exist. So I've really been pushing, as we're looking 20 years out and how people are going to move. Light rail is an amazing economic development tool. We've seen it in South End, but it isn't the tool, in my opinion, that is going to move mass amounts of people, help with congestion through growth as that occurs. So I believe in roads today and the pain we feel, paired with the 5G infrastructure the Internet of Things, IoT, where we're connecting devices and street signals and cars and vehicles all together as we move towards an autonomous vehicle approach, where we have smart corridors connected to these nodes or hubs. And then all of a sudden, we don't sit around and wait, okay, are autonomous vehicles ubiquitous? What we say is, we're going to have and use the roads where people move today. But as that industry evolves, well, they might start to become dedicated as we recruit autonomous vehicle companies to come here. So that's how people are going to actually move in the future, more than fixed rail as we've seen it as an economic development.
I've been talking to you specifically about transit for as long as you've been coming on the show, which is basically as long as you've been a council member. And honestly, if I'm just talking from a taxpayer standpoint, it's a bit frustrating, the lack of action, because anybody could have predicted the situation we're currently in a year and a half ago. It was very obvious, even in the interviews I do on the show, that this is where we stood, and we still stand there right now. What's going to happen to get that 1 cent sales tax on the ballot, which is really the final step where voters will have the final say? We forget about that sometimes. What is going to happen to make that a reality, so I'm not still talking to you about this 2 years from now?
Well, so much there, I'm annoyed internally just thinking about it. As you look back, the way I'm diagnosing why we're here, which is the same place we've always been, is there's just been the Charlotte way in a lot of cases is to market or brand our way to the destination we want to go, rather than go back, analyze the situation, and recraft the plan. So it's been the same old plan that has been dead on arrival. It's like, the Sixth Sense. Bruce Willis is the only one that doesn't know it's dead, right? Now we're realizing that the plan is dead, and people are suddenly, for the first time, becoming aware, okay, maybe we have to do something different, and we can't brand our way out of it. So how we figure this out is we actually keep going on the plan, not create 300-page document that talks about the amazing theories of roads, but we actually create a funding model and an execution plan on that. We get on board with the General Assembly. We've already identified amazing opportunities at a federal level for federal funding that would actually cover this kind of stuff. And then we bring it to the voters in a referendum. And trust me, I am the last person on this planet who wants to even think about a tax increase on any front. But if it's for the future of our roads, the one thing we really need to do, if the plan is right, the General Assembly and the towns are on board, I see the logic in saying, okay, the taxpayers, to your point, the voters have the final word on this, and then it will be their will that we execute, not one or two people and their individual opinions on if it's right or wrong.
Tark Bakari, council member. Tark, thanks as always for coming on Flashpoint. All right, more Flashpoint after this.